Hi, I'm Dawn Montefusco, life coach for writers and creatives, and this is Write Your True Story: How to Use Your Story to Grow Your Business, Inspire Millions, and Leave a Legacy. And today on the show, I have guest Dr. Amy Johnson, who I have to say I'm so stoked to have on the show today because I stumbled upon her book, became like a crazy fan, quoting her left and right, and then I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks later, I decided to do this project. And then as I was thinking about who to have on the show, I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if she'll do it. And so this is a really big, I'm just like a silly gloating fan right now. But she is an author, coach, and speaker who shares a groundbreaking new approach that helps people find true lasting freedom from unwanted habits via insight rather than willpower. She's the author of Being Human and The Little Book of Big Change, the no willpower approach to breaking any habit. That's the book that I went crazy over. In 2017, she opened the Little School of Big Change, an online school that has helped hundreds of people find freedom from anxiety and habits and live a more peaceful life. She's been a regularly featured expert on The Steve Harvey Show and Oprah.com, as well as in the Wall Street Journal and Self Magazine. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Dawn. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Oh, this is so great. So tell us a little bit more about what you do or any projects that are going on, anything you want to let us know that I didn't cover.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I work with a lot of people, helping them get through habits, addictions, anxiety, depression, all kinds of things, that we're used to working really hard to try to fix and get through. And I help them basically by sharing this understanding of how our mind works and what's working on our behalf, So I do a lot of work one-on-one with clients. I do a lot of work with people within my school that you mentioned, the online school. And I love to write. And so I write an article every single week on my blog, have for 10 years. And I'm always thinking about, different book ideas and writing forwards for books and just lots of writing.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I loved when you talk about how you came across a down-to-earth spiritual understanding of life that changed everything for you. And I love that you're talking about writing, because another habit that I deal with my clients or writers in general is that we like to distract ourselves. We get a lot of anxiety around the writing. So I love that you are combining not just like a bad habit like smoking. You're talking about a range of habits, including anxiety, which is something I think a lot of us deal with. But here's what I love. You actually share your personal story about anxiety and ways that you were battling that, including a food disorder, in the book, which is very honest and vulnerable for someone. Usually, like back in the day, we used to hide behind these perfect pictures of ourselves. So how has this authentic and vulnerable storytelling really helped you connect with your tribe, with people that you can help?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it really is. To hear you ask it, it's almost like what goes through my mind is like, well, how else is, and I know what you're saying, because I was trained as a psychologist, and like, there's a wall and you don't talk about yourself in that world. Right. And even just in so many fields, there's like a leader and then a follower, a teacher and a student. There's this whole thing of trying to look a certain way. And we're all human. I learn from my clients more than they learn from me, I'm sure, and I think to be able to, I'm not saying it's always easy, but to be able to share that stuff and just say, hey, here's the stuff going on through my head. How about you? It's huge. It's instant connection. But also what's funny about it, and we could maybe talk more about this, but like what's funny about it is this understanding that I came across that helped so much in that area, because this stuff showing up, like it started to not look personal. It's not about
Mm.
me, never was about me. It's not about you, never was about you. People are so used to in this culture, and we're still pointed in this direction of, I have this issue and this is my flaw, and we're embarrassed and shameful. And to just see, wow, we're all human beings. We all operate in exactly the same way. It might show up for you in a slightly different way than someone else, but that's just the package in which it shows up. We're all the same. So that takes so much of that out. And again, it's let me just really like connect with people on a deeper level.
I love that you said that you in the book, and everyone should go out and get the book, about how you don't take your thoughts personally. Like
Yeah.
you really help the reader go through that. And that's when you just said like we're all the same. We're all gonna create these thoughts, and they could be vulnerable, like insecure, I'm afraid someone's gonna judge me, but like someone just said, everyone's gonna judge you all the time, so you might as well be yourself. You might as well just live the life you need to live. But what I'm curious about was, were you afraid to to really just be that vulnerable about what was going on with your issues, especially from the psychology background? Because I think in coaching, that's kind of the thing. The coaches have to get through their stuff to help other people. But in psychology, I do find that there's that little bit of a distancing,
Yeah.
um, and you push through that nicely. You totally push through that. But were you afraid?
Yes. And yes and no, like I pushed through that a while ago.
Oh, good.
So like I kind of realized, okay, this is like, it just feels right to just look in this bigger direction of we're all the same. So
Mhm.
that was definitely a process. I mean, I'm not going to say like, a year, 2 years, 3 years out of grad school when everybody was saying, did you hear
Mhm.
about Amy? She went off the deep end. She's a life coach now.
Oh,
Like
right.
that was not cool. and and so there was some stuff that came up around that, but at the same time it's funny because even like in sharing that I used to hide in the closet and eat food, like that's not the most flattering thing either. But and so there's stuff that comes up, but there's always like something kind of bigger that
Mhm.
I just know to do it, you
Yeah,
know
yeah,
and I
yeah,
think that's the
totally.
feeling. Yeah, like people, I can see like in your face, like you can relate to that. Like so
Yeah.
sometimes we're like moved in a direction, and then our
Mhm.
mind is over here saying, what the hell are you doing? Are you
Right, right.
kidding? But we're still moved. And so that, like it's that kind of thing.
I love it. Yeah. So what did you write the little book of big change before the little school of big change?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell
The
us a
book's
little bit
about
about
three
the
years
book.
old. Yeah. And the
How that
school is
happened.
about
That's
a year old.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You first wrote the book,
Yeah.
and then that writing of your story and writing of the how you push through the bad habits and without willpower, that led you to creating the little school of big change. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had so many people and still do, like you just said, like kind of read this and be like, wow, this is different. I want to see more about this. So
Yeah.
it really is the coolest thing. It's what everyone kind of hopes for, is like just to get feedback that leads you into something. So that's kind of
Mhm.
how the school was born, is people saying, this is awesome and I want more, because now my habit's gone maybe, but there's more I want to see about this. So then that led to the school.
And does that community help? Do they share stories together in terms of how they, the trials and tribulations of bad habits and things like that?
Yeah, and it's the best thing. Like I think it's one of the best things for us is we have this community, and everyone's sharing, and like me, like people have their stuff, and so it's not always comfortable or easy, and sometimes people private message me and they're not ready to share, and that's okay. But for the most part, people are sharing, and what other people get to see is, oh, me too. Me too. Me
Mm.
too. Me too. And there's a wide range of I mean, there's people with really debilitating anxiety, to lots of eating issues in there, to drinking, to drugs, to all kinds of stuff. But we're all the same. Like we
Yeah.
don't say, oh, I went out and, shut up or drank this or ate this, because it's not about that. What
Mhm.
we're looking toward is all the thinking before that. So
Right.
how it shows up, fine, but where we're all the same is that we feel our thinking, and it's brought to life and we don't like it. So we do something to try to feel better. And so when we talk at that angle and people get to see other people sharing, like you said, like your first question, it's like, wow, we just have this quick, deep connection because we really
Mhm.
see that we're all
Mhm.
the same.
What is it, do you think, about struggle that is so empowering to share. Like, because I think that when it comes to business, when we think about a more traditional old school business model,
Yeah.
being vulnerable and talking about struggle, oh, we don't want to turn off people. But now we've sort of entered into a whole new level of sharing, specifically our struggle, in order to empower ourselves and others. What is it about struggle that's so empowering when it's in your opinion, when it's shared?
Yeah. I love that question. It's a great question. I mean, struggle is a part of natural, normal human life. So everything that's not sharing it is in some way resisting what is totally natural. It's like
Yeah.
resisting winter. Like you can stay in and you can complain about the weather and you can never go out and you can say that you have, seasonal depression and you can like that's fine, but it's going to be winter anyway.
Mm.
So live with it, not to people with seasonal depression thing, but I'm just saying, like it's like life is going to happen. And part of that is that no matter how wise and enlightened you are going to struggle. You are going to feel struggle. So it's two things, it's like the person who's suffering to get to just voice that
Mm.
when we're voicing it, we can't be at the same time caught up in this shouldn't be happening and I'm so embarrassed and it's all about me. Like you have to kind of push that out of the way to share it. So it's so healing to share it. And then it's so healing for other people to come around and see someone sharing it because it just diffuses it for them too.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Especially, and I love that it's actually now, as far as I can, well, this is the point of this project. Instead of that like formulaic, I'm telling my story to
Yeah.
get customers, it's more about, no, I'm actually really telling this authentic, vulnerable story so that I get the right people that are attracted to me, right?
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
some ways, it also allows you to weed out the people that you're not supposed to work with, right?
Yeah.
So, like, in that
Yeah.
respect. So, in the sense of an entrepreneurial spirit, who do you think you would be if you didn't tell your story? Like if you would have stayed silent about your story, how maybe would your business have been different, do you think?
Oh my gosh. I think it'd be totally different. Well, I think back to how it was before I shared my story, which, there's always little bits of kind of pushing for me. There's a little process of pushing the envelope and sharing in a
Mhm.
blog post or going
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
going
that's a good
there,
point.
Yeah. And not that like billions of people have read my book because they haven't, but it's definitely in there in a bigger way. Um, but it's like there's a sense of just I mean, I think it's that sense of like holding back a little bit of just hiding,
Mhm.
hiding and not that's not even a bad like not in a terrible way, but it's different. It doesn't get to show people that it's okay to suffer. Like that's the whole point for me in sharing that this is a normal human thing and it doesn't mean anything.
Mm.
Just by definition, if we aren't sharing, like what we aren't sharing or what we're afraid to share, because we're not going to share everything, but what we're afraid to share, we have some judgment about, we have some thinking about, and that's okay too. Like that's normal and human too. But I don't know. I think people just really pick up on that. And there's such
Mhm.
a connection. Like I remember so clearly when and I was not a big Oprah fan, but remember when Oprah lost all that weight and then she came back and she had gained the weight, like
Mhm.
maybe in like 2010. And she said, I don't know, like you
Mhm.
guys, I gained it back. Sorry. Because she was all about, empowering people. And like
Totally.
I just sat there and bawled through that episode because I'm like,
Oh,
that is amazing. Like here she is. She gained her 100 pounds back or whatever. And she's just sitting there saying, hey, sorry, I'm human too. I know everyone in the world thinks I'm amazing. Well, look, I just gained 100 pounds. Let's just look at it.
yeah.
And there's just something, I don't know, there's something in that I think speaks to like the deeper humanness in all of
Mhm.
us. So I'm not really answering your question, but I feel like when we speak to that deeper humanness in all of us, it is good for business. It's good for transformation. It's good for everything.
Do you feel that by sharing your story, you have it on your video, on your website, you have it in your book, that is then as soon as someone contacts you, there's a sense of trust. Like, hey, Amy,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And so, and that trust inevitably leads to better business, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think so for sure. Yeah.
We sort of trust Oprah in that respect, that the
Yeah.
next thing she says or whatever she's, passionate about isn't a lie. That she's probably,
Right.
telling it straight. And when people tell it straight, I think that there's like an immediate connection and a trust that happens where you can feel the difference
Yeah.
of that person. And so what I was going to say is, has it been your experience that when you get real with your people, they're more likely to share your story with others? So in other words, word of mouth activity and referrals and that kind of thing from a very vulnerable position
Mhm.
is instead shared as a triumph.
Yeah.
Do you have you experienced that?
I think so. I mean, I'm personally really horrible at like kind of tracking
Ah,
how how things get around, like on the marketing end of things. I have no idea how where people come from, but I do hear things like that. Yeah, I mean, I think for sure. I think for sure, and it does. It makes you relatable, whoever you are. It does. It makes you trustworthy and normal and human and relatable.
yeah, no, I mean, I'm almost, I mean, I have that question and then it occurred to me, love the subconscious mind at work, is that the way I've been talking to people about you, and then I lead with your story, and they go, "Huh," and like maybe I should look into that. And it's been really interesting for me to be on that end of it, going, "Wow, this is incredible." Another question: you mentioned it in terms of social media and internet, and blogging. How has or do you feel? Well, the internet has obviously changed the way we convey our stories. But what I like that you said is you don't have to give it all up at once. That would you give someone that kind of advice, a new entrepreneur who obviously has a great personal story where they've, overcome some struggle, it's a bit vulnerable, but they're afraid of really just like throwing it up into a book or on a big long post. Would you maybe recommend little bits in your experience working with other people who've gone through this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't say you have like some people are just more comfortable. So do
Mhm.
what you're comfortable
Right.
with.
Oh, yeah.
But it is definitely for me, it's been one of those things of like, and I think for a lot of people of you share a little bit and you have some thinking about it initially. And then it just like you just hit a new level of comfort. And then you're
Mhm.
like, I can't believe I was really worried about that. And now you're
Mhm.
sharing more and
Yeah.
you're saying more, you know? So yeah, I think that's a great way. And just in general, just to what we're saying, like the whole place you're coming from in being an entrepreneur and growing a business and stuff is this angle, not even angle, but just a place of authenticity of,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and that, you know, I wouldn't ever recommend to any entrepreneur to go out and really like do something that just makes your sin crawl. Like do what you're comfortable, like push your, you know, go to your limits, but
Mhm.
just do the best you can.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty in today's world, I think, is we get a million chances. I mean, people are
Mhm.
looking and seeing all kinds of things.
I find that when I started to put a little bit more out there about myself, when I would get like two emails that say thank you, or one email says, "Oh, or a comment," and then I'd go, "Oh," and then that over the probably the last year or two has prompted me to tell a little bit more and a little bit more. So I really just thought of that this in this interview, this idea of bite-sized pieces for people to really test the water slowly.
Yeah.
Which leads to my next question: do you think you can be too vulnerable in terms of using your story for business?
Um, I don't know if it's too. See. I think what people feel is where you are with it. I
Mhm.
think definitely, like you can give a ton of personal information and say, "Oh, I hope people connect with that." But if you're doing it to give a ton of personal information, hoping people connect with it, that's a little bit different. And I think people sniff that out, you know, like I just think that's kind of obvious. So I wouldn't say it's like too vulnerable or too much sharing if it's coming from the right place,
Mhm.
you know, but that's the cool thing about not worrying about how it's going to land. And
Mhm.
again, I think it's a beautiful thing in today's world where we have that luxury. Like, I don't really, except for maybe that little nagging like ego voice in the back of my head, I don't have a thing of like, "Ooh, this is going to really affect people or this is going to hit them for this reason." You know, it's like, I'm really truly just saying stuff that I think's helpful. And a lot of times it's not, and that's okay. You
Mhm.
know, that's the beauty. It's like, okay, no one really, you know, responded to that email and said, I love this article. Okay, so I won't repost that one.
Right. Yeah.
But then sometimes they do.
Yeah.
And like it's a constant focus group. It's constant feedback that we're getting without having to be super scientific about it. so yeah, it's just sort of a playground. And so I think if you go a little too far or it's coming from a wrong place, you'll know because no one will say anything.
Yeah, yes.
You'll know that too.
I like that, specifically because it's, in terms of like testing the waters by saying, oh, it's almost like handing it over to your higher self, saying, okay, which direction should I go?
Yeah.
I've got these reasons, these struggles that I've overcome that have been propelling me into these better places I want to share with people, my wins. And then sometimes you don't know which direction to go, but I think that when we tell our stories, plural,
Yeah.
right, that when we see how they land, that might be even a sign to which direction to move our businesses in.
Yes.
Which is great. I was just thinking of that from what you said. This
Yeah.
great process. Let's see what else. So when it comes to storytelling, did you feel that, this is a weird question I just thought of, um, does coaching allow you to be more vulnerable versus maybe obviously a more traditional psychologist? Did you take this route as author and speaker and coach because it felt so good to tell your true story, to like connect on that level? Like, what was the the real inspiration that you felt? So what's that feeling that you felt that tugged you in the direction of really just revealing the truth?
Yeah. Um, that's a good question too. Like for me, it was that I saw that we're all okay. And like
Mm,
I'm obviously really paraphrasing, like boiling this down, but in some way, the whole psychology understanding, the whole underpinning there is that there's something wrong that
mhm,
needs to be fixed.
mhm.
So when I kind of started to get glimpses of this, and I did even studying psychology, but it was after the fact when that just made absolutely no sense to me anymore. Like we are not disorders walking around that need coping mechanisms. We are totally perfect, healthy,
Mhm.
fully whole, human beings who get caught up in thinking. Like that's what really shifted it from any kind of traditional therapy to coaching for me, because
Mhm.
the traditional therapy, like I didn't even understand, I didn't even agree with their whole basic underpinning anymore. And coaching comes from, or there's room, whatever coaching is, it comes from this place, or it can, of that kind of spiritual understanding.
Yeah.
So that kind of came first. And then for me personally, that was a little bit later because I saw that people were perfect and whole. And I knew it in theory about myself, and I knew it absolutely for you and everyone else.
Mhm.
But to really feel it for myself, that was a little bit of a process. So that's why
Mm.
I kind of did this coaching stuff first and was kind of pushing the envelope of me too. Am I perfect too? Am I perfect too? And then just in the sharing, it was a bit of a dance. I think the sharing helped me see, oh yeah, this all applies to me too.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's say there's a woman out there, she's afraid of being judged. She just really doesn't know, you know, how to get past that feeling of I'm scared. So, what advice maybe would you give to someone that's really nervous about putting that story out there, but they know that they should? Like, is there any little bits of advice that you'd give someone who is starting out that is afraid to share their story?
Well, I think kind of like we were saying, like we touched on already, it's just that, just push the limits a little bit and see what
Mm-hmm.
happens. Like
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, you can leap and the net will appear, whatever. But I mean, most people, the thought of that just scares the crap out of them, and they run back to their cubicle job. So, like, if you just ease into it and see if
Mm,
it doesn't get easier. And also just know, like, again, that's why you do projects like this, to share the
mhm.
fact that we all have that kind of thinking. We do. Like,
Yes.
I don't know anyone who just like wants to jump out and say, hey, here's what I went through. I mean,
Mhm.
really, like, no one. So it's normal, and then so kind of know it's normal, and then just kind of push it and see that it's not as hard as your
Mm.
mind is telling you it will be.
And is there one specific tidbit of a story that you get from most of your audience that says, I love when you said blank?
Um, no, but people love details, and
Mhm.
that's one thing that I always want to just, kind of get to the big picture of things, like just because I think that's what's important for people to see, and it probably is. But then everybody's like, yeah, but like, what did you eat in your binges? Or like, yeah, but how bad off were you really? And so I'm okay with sharing some of that just to like, get the point across.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I think that people love the details, and I do get lots of questions about like, okay, so tell me what it was like for you as you started to come out of it.
Mm.
Not like a before and after, which is maybe
Mhm.
what my tendency would be, but they want to know, like, as your habit started going away, but then you still had thoughts about it, like, what'd you do then?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's just like the storyteller kind of personality in us, or we love stories. And
Oh,
so we want those
yeah,
details.
we love it. What do
Yeah.
you think it is about the hero's journey that we all love? Like it seems like we're all going through some kind of a hero's journey. We have a call to action. We refuse the call sometimes. We struggle through it and we prevail. Why do you think that's such an awesome story for us to hear, no matter how many times we hear
I think it's just hopeful.
it? Mm. Yeah,
It's
totally.
hopeful, and it's universal, and we get that it's universal.
Mhm.
Even if your journey is totally different than everyone
Mhm.
else's, there's a progression there that we see
Yes,
all over. And that, I think that ultimately that probably just leaves us hopeful. Like,
yes.
okay, no matter how bad it gets, I know this stuff turns around.
Ah, on
Yeah,
that note,
good to
that's
know.
awesome. Yes. So you have a free gift you're going to offer that we'll have linked here. Would you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it's one of the lessons in the Little School of Big Change, which again, the Little School of Big Change is like it's an online school and community, but there's lots of video lessons and content that kind of help people see this understanding I share. So I'm going
Mhm.
to share one of the lessons.
Oh, fun. I can't wait for that. Anything else that you would like to tell people out there in terms of authenticity, vulnerability, or in terms of anything you're working on as we close up?
I think, I'm loving just what we've been talking about in terms of just sort of pushing that envelope a little bit, and don't worry about it. I love a lot of your questions too are kind of coming from this thing of like, we know it's good for business, we know it's good for connection, but we can make it a strategy. Humans are really good at making anything a strategy. Like, oh, I have to be authentic today. I have to be open today. How am I going to do that? Now, if you doing that, or if somebody is at home, like putting all this pressure on themselves, like, why don't I feel comfortable sharing my story? Like,
Yeah.
just don't worry. like, more thinking about it and more pressure is never going to make it easy.
Yeah.
Just, I love that you're putting out stuff like this so people can just kind of sit back, be inspired. Sometimes it's just a little idea like, I wonder if I could share that.
Yeah.
And, a week or a month or a year later, it's like, yeah, I can, but you can't feel that way until you feel that way. So don't worry.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And we're also connected. That's what
Yeah.
I'm feeling and learning through this whole process is, and hopefully that trickles out. And the idea of inspiring, right? Millions. It's the 21st century and we have the internet. It's like global communication, we could actually be read and heard. So this is so much fun. And I love that we get to see each other virtually and help the world tell more stories.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, Amy, thank you so much for being here today. And everybody else, make sure you go get her book. I have it right here. This is the library copy. I actually gave away the copies that I bought for myself, and now I have this again. And I'm going to go buy more. But have a great day. And I can't thank you enough for being here to talk about this, Amy.
Thank you so much. It's great to talk with you.
All right. Bye.